Okay, so so I believe, before I go on and just do a little bit more delving in, and I draw you my diagram for how I believe the ultra experiment works, I just want to clarify a couple of other points. One, when we did our extreme interactions here thing, you will recall there's these three structures that come together here. And the sequence of events is, firstly, you have these other structures over here that look exactly like ball lightning photography. So this is a natural ball lightning. I think Bitchkoff has it in his work. But you see these kinks here, these kinks here, these kinks. And this is the same kinks that we see on this. So kink here, kink here. Okay? All right. If we go here, we saw this structure. It comes out. It goes round, it bounces off, it turns round the other way, it comes round this way, comes round, and this one comes out. And it gets to within this area and it starts to orbit around it. And then another one is coming out here and it orbits around that. I believe that this one is already starting to orbit around this torsion moment, this toroidal moment that's projecting out in front of this, okay? And then this one comes out in a straight line, but it instantaneously wraps around this one because of these paired toroidal moments. And it comes along here, but they're not sufficient enough to stay clustered and they fall apart. But there's this wonderful one that comes up from up here, and it sees one of these, which is the biggest one, the one that started, I believe. And it comes around here, and as it comes to here, this one does a 180-degree orbit around it, 180-degree orbit, and then it starts following it, but in the counter rotation. Okay, so it is breathtaking how the sphere of influence around this thing, and how it's manipulating something that is not a magnetic field, not an electric field. It is, I believe, this toroidal moment, and this is, you're seeing this attempt of these various particles to get and join together. Now, in this one, which I believe I've got the video here, so I might be able to... No, I don't. Do I have the video? Let me see if I can get that video. It might just be the still, actually. Maybe it's the still. Yeah, it's just the still. Okay. Well, you can go and see me talking about it in extreme reactions, interactions. But the point being here is that we have about 4 or 5 frames in this, and so for instance this one comes up here, and this little gap here is where the frame breaks. This one comes up here, and what's happening is this is coming around here, and it sends a beam out in front of it, okay? And this one comes up and it sees this beam and it changes its direction and orbits around it, but this being here itself influences this one to come back, and when it comes back on itself, this orbit bends away in a different direction. This one is coming along here, and before this is able to meet it, it already all kinks round and goes round and gets destabilized by it. So this particular series of frames from David Boutilier's work is just unbelievably informative about how these working. Now, I did a sequence of images from my time with Henk Uren recently, and this is one of them. And we were using this Sony A1, and it produces in the digital raw images, it produces 14 bits or per RGB of dynamic range, and that enables us to, and this is the reason the camera was bought. It was the only thing that would give us that resolution, that control over all of the specifics of the camera, and with a good lens we were able to look at the plasma and then be able to pull out from what's in the plasma what is going on. And in this one we see 2 spots. It looks like one explosion, but it's not. It's 2 spots. And you can see that it also has some substructure in there, and it looks like one is interacting with the other. There's a bit of a tail coming in and coming into this one. And I showed another one where there was 2 spots on one side and 2 spots on the other, and I believe that is functionally equivalent to the one that we saw right at the start in the bubble structures, where you've got this kind of thing. You've got 2 spots and 2 spots, okay? these are fractal structures, and they work in plasma. They work in this, which is plasma is a magnetohydrodynamic structure. This is also a magnetohydrodynamic structure in here. Now, this is very, very important. The other thing that I want to talk about, these these 2 points, I need to pull up the video because it shows what I want to get across here, and then I will show you my conclusion drawing after a little bit of fun. So so I will. I need to go here, and I need to go here, and I need to go. Nope. Suffer the issues earlier. So if you recall, this is what I called the tungsten chop shop. Thank you to Henk Uren for this. And what happened is this ball came round, and what happened was on the other side of this ring of the anode tungsten wire, another resonant bloom occurred on the other side. Okay? And I believe that this is our two spots, if you know what I mean. But it doesn't occur until it gets into a point where everything is in equilibrium. Okay, so I believe that, you know, this is a complete positive and negative. And I spoke about, how should we put this? Give me a second. Other example. To this, which was in my Sochi presentation, and this was the Arecibo telescope that sent out a message, and it looked like this, and this was the response that we got back, and it looked like this, and it was by the Chilbolton Observatory, but a year before it had this structure, and it was this ring with a spot, and I said that was the fundamental structure, and then around that you have a ring, which is the ring, if you can imagine it, orthogonal at 90 degrees to this, and this is at 90 degrees to that, and it's showing this fractal structure, and it's the simplest form of the fractal structure. It's the spiral arm galaxy, but you need to have 2 to start scaling this thing. You can have 3, you can have 4 at this level, but you need to have at least a minimum at each fractal level. Okay, so does that make sense? Okay, and this is kind of what I'm saying is happening at that tungsten chop shop. It needs to get to that resonant sense to have 3. Okay, so there's one last point, and this is absolutely critical because it kind of connects these things together. So we started off by talking about the kind of like this is about the ultra experiment, but we started talking about at one point the Mars vibrator plates, and how out of the center of those Mars vibrator plates we had a spiral thing that looked like ball lightning with these 2 things rotating around each other around the common center, but you kind of sometimes only see one side of it, so it looks a bit weird. And I kind of explained that I believe that one side is positive, one side is negative. It's the charge separation that's going on. I believe that when we look again at what's going on with what we showed in the last presentation with the copper on the metal with the gap like that, with the thing going through, one is a kind of like an electron cluster, another one is a positive thing cluster, which could be positrons, or it could be actually protons, because they are half positive and the other one's half negative spin, and they would kind of like, it seems a bit weird, but often one seems a little bit bigger in those circumstances. What we know is that when you put hydrogen into the Vega experiment, you immediately see these balls forming. And now I've remembered what I wanted to show you. Okay, so because it's relevant to what I'm trying to get across here, and it is in Vega, and that's why I couldn't see it with my puny brain. What are we looking at here? It's this one, I think. Okay, so yes. Some serious things in the Vega experiment. Okay. Right. And what we see here, this is a full ball on the part here, and that's kind of the theory here. These are balls self-organizing. But if you recall, I asked many moons ago, what are these two spots on these structures? And I believe that these could be the self-balancing structure that's going on, and that these are interacting. And you could imagine that these are like this, where you have one side and one the other, but it actually has a much shorter piece of twisty, felty stuff in between, like this. So actually, I'm going to make it up here now. This is my demonstration. It's kind of like more like this, like that. Okay, so what you're seeing on this with those two spots are kind of something like that, or maybe something like that, right? Okay. And you've got a lot of electrons and ions flying around, but that is what one is the positive spin thing, and one is the negative. And given the fact that you put hydrogen in there, it could be that the hydrogen is ionized, and you get protons, which are half positive spin, and you get electrons, which are half negative spin, and the two form that ball, and with those highlighted spots. And that is kind of it. There we go. That's that done. Right. Right, yeah, I don't think I want to say anything more there. Tungsten chop shop. Okay, all right. So, what I'm now going to do is over here, somewhere over there, I have a pad or paper where I have drawn something which I believe potentially is what's going on. But before I do that, I need to show a couple of things. No, I'm gonna do the Shishkin thing first. I have to do the Shishkin first, right? So Shishkin, if you recall, he had, and I'm going to be translating all of his work after the Russian conference. That's my plan. He's given me permission to do that. So he was tasked with making a processor to produce an emulsion of oil and water. And how he chose to do that was he created two discs, but the discs had grooves and slots and so on, and they went round like that, and they produced vast amounts of cavitation. But this was to efficiently mix the oil and water into this emulsion. Okay, he had a little motor driving that, and it was going around at a few thousand RPM or hundreds of RPM. What he found was when he was near that device, it made him feel really physically ill. And so he thought, well, I can do radiation. So he put some X-ray film on there, and he saw these birdies for the first time. We're going to go to that paper, but what I've pointed out to here is that the cavitation leading to cold neutrino condensate, okay? That's what he calls it, and necessarily it requires gravity to capture, necessarily requires gravity capture of neutrinos as only affected by weak force and gravity, okay? So what this toroidal moment is allowing you to do, according to this data, is to capture neutrinos, cold neutrinos, okay, from the cosmos. Okay, so we are pulling in Parkhomov here with Shishkin and taking the Dubovit work, all of these things that you've seen, these triangle structures that you've seen, these vortical structures and these toroidal structures, bringing all of these things together. This is gravity modification. That's what it is. It is gravity decay of nuclear matter. It's gravity assembly of nuclear matter. This is the God's toolbox. This is the end. This is literally it. So there's two points that I need to do here. I need to do the Shishkin paper and I need to do the introduction to Space Earth Human. So I need to go and get that video for you so that it makes sense. So first, just let me note down what I have to do in order, because I would have done this earlier, but a new form of penetrating radiation. Okay. You can go and have a look at these. I'll include these videos into the references for this, of course, but some of you will have seen them before. Right. So, okay. So, like I say, essentially what I'm doing right now is I'm just running through my thoughts for what I want to present in Assisi to explain this. But the Ultra experiment, I believe, 100% does this. We can completely explain why radiation remediation occurs with what I'm going to talk about next week. It will be very, very trivial, and we've essentially done most of the key aspects of these technologies, and everything else just follows. It's kind of like, you're now skilled in the art. Okay, all right. So we need to go here and YouTube Studio. Okay. In connections between the cosmos and man. If you are interested in connections between the cosmos and man, or in ways to tap the unlimited sea of energy in which we live, then please help enable the English translation of this Russian book, Space, Earth, Human, by scientist Dr. Alexander Parkhomov. My name is Bob Greenyer. Since 2012, I have been supported by an community of wonderful people just like you to volunteer for the open, not-for-profit Martin Fleischmann Memorial Project. Scientists across the world are waking up to the role that neutrinos might play in how everything in our reality works, and how they may enable the next chapter in our history. Okay, so I'm going to wind that back, because those are the key papers that you need to read to understand this. So, okay, so, come on. Right, so, total reflection of relic neutrinos from material targets. Okay, that is one thing, right? So if relic neutrinos can be totally reflected, then it is potential that clusters of relic neutrinos can be reflected, even if you synthesize them or you capture those larger clusters. So that is important. This is why I believe that Parkhomov had these soft iron reflectors, whether they be a parabolic dish towards a beta isotope target, or whether on his reactors he would typically have a piece of reflecting material around it. So these can, this is this paper that kind of explains the science behind that. This one is from Bob McElrath, and he's from the CERN Theory Group, and I think this is in 2008 or 2010, sometime around there. And this is, the question I ask here is, are low energy relic neutrinos the cause of gravity? And he concludes that, he says, cosmic background neutrinos must exist. This is the relic neutrinos. They are a superfluid, and their self-interactions are a gravitational theory. These dynamics arise in the standard model, which is a renormalizable quantum field theory. We suggest that this may actually be the gravity that we observe. Okay? Okay, so they're saying that because of relic neutrinos, that could be the cause of gravity. Okay? And then let's go on a little bit further. Where we go? Okay, so there was some other papers in there. It might be that it's just not capturing them. Let me see. That one. Okay. All right. So, do low energy relic neutrinos stimulate beta decay? And there is all this data from these independent authors that suggest that it does. Okay. Electroweak gravity. Can low-energy neutrino condensates explain the lack of photon emissions in the new fire? And it's talking about things that are a bit weird and about the de Broglie wavelength. So I would suggest you go and have a look at that. And he's saying that it's a thing that spans across the whole cosmos, and it's one coherent condensate. This is available in every point in the universe. So we go along here, and I'm going to show you which one do I want to show you? Okay, I recommend you go and see this. This image is very, very important here, and I specifically chose this all those moons ago for this reason. This is a dual Evo strike going through lead glass. Now you can see they're kind of overlaid, but you have an outie and an innie, an outie and an innie. I think this is exactly what we're seeing in our own work, but it's two, right? This again, he calls it a single strike, but I believe this is still a composite. I don't know if you can see it, but there's kind of like a dimple here, like a butt crack, if you might want to call it that. And this still looks like there's an outie and an innie here. They're just more like horn torus rather than a torus. This is a horn torus. This is a torus, okay, with the sloshing involved. And it's because of the electromagnetic phantom that's coming through the material that interacts with the electrons and just turns it into a glassy state, and it basically does it instantaneously. Again here with this dual Evo coming through, it's spiraling around each other. It's spiraling around each other. This is the same thing we see over and over, whatever system you're looking at here. And this is our friend Matsumoto here. And so this is incredibly important. I spent a long time with this author here. This was between 1987 and 1999. Xu Wenzhou found that during Sun, Moon, and Earth alignments, an unusual force of horizontal oscillation takes place. Okay, and crystals they kind of like form these linear arrays, which is almost like a gravity reaction, a refraction pattern in itself, but recorded in crystals. Lead tin alloy, the spectral waves, the lengths of the atoms, and blah blah blah. What he noticed here was that in fact I've got a thing here and it comes up. Like I say, I encourage you to go and look at this. The spectral wavelengths of atoms or molecules and the speed rate of atomic clocks. So it alters atomic clocks. But also he found that with this brass sheet, and it's important that it's brass, and you'll find out next week, it's brass sheet, there's, in the three-body alignment, I hypothesize that there's this denser flux of relevant neutrinos on the outside because they can be reflected by dense matter. They're gravitationally lensed because these are a type of neutrinos. They can only be affected by the weak force and gravity. And that they diffuse in from the outside, okay? They diffuse in from the outside, and that is pushing. Therefore, in my view, gravity is caused by relevant neutrino condensates. This pervades the whole universe, and it is a push force of gravity. And the gravitational well is the fact that the matter inside the Earth is growing, and we are growing, life is growing. We absorb this thing and we capture it. And by capturing it, you produce a lower pressure zone. That is your gravitational well. Okay. Yes, Dave talked into reaction, a refraction pattern in itself, but recorded in crystals. Lead tin alloy, the spectral waves, the lengths of the atoms, and blah blah blah. What he noticed here was that in fact I've got a thing here and it comes up. Like I say, I encourage you to go and look at this. The spectral wavelengths of atoms or molecules and the speed rate of atomic clocks. So it alters atomic clocks. But also he found that with this brass sheet, and it's important that it's brass, and you'll find out next week, it's brass sheet, there's, in the three-body alignment, I hypothesize that there's this denser flux of relevant neutrinos on the outside because they can be reflected by dense matter. They're gravitationally lensed because these are a type of neutrinos. They can only be affected by the weak force and gravity. and that they diffuse in from the outside. Okay, they diffuse in from the outside, and that is pushing. Therefore, in my view, gravity is caused by relic neutrino condensates. This pervades the whole universe, and it is a push force of gravity. And the gravitational well is the fact that the matter inside the Earth is growing, and we are growing, life is growing. We absorb this thing and we capture it. And by capturing it, you produce a lower pressure zone. That is your gravitational well. Okay. Right. So, total reflection of relic neutrinos from material targets. Okay, that is one thing, right? So if relic neutrinos can be totally reflected, then it is potential that clusters of relic neutrinos can be reflected, even if you synthesize them or you capture those larger clusters. So that is important. This is why I believe that Parkhomov had these soft iron reflect this, which was in my Sochi presentation, and this was the Arecibo telescope that sent out a message, and it looked like this, and this was the response that we got back, and it looked like this, and it was by the Chilbolton Observatory, but a year before it had this structure, and it was this ring with a spot, and I said that was the fundamental structure, and then around that you have a ring, which is the ring, if you can imagine it, orthogonal at 90 degrees to this, and this is at 90 degrees to that, and it's showing this fractal structure, and it's the simplest form of the fractal structure. It's the spiral arm galaxy, but you need to have 2 to start scaling this thing. You can have 3, you can have 4.